Good afternoon to all for the second session of day first of the online FDP on real estate management conducted by Cyber and Atal Academy. The session today is on structural engineering issues and challenges. We have the resource person today, Sachin Paranspe, Director, Swapnashil Housing Private Limited, Kolhapur. He is one of the senior experienced structural engineer in our area. I would like to give a brief introduction regarding sir. He has graduated from Walchand College of Engineering, Sangli in 1997. Later, he did his MTech Civil Structural Engineering from IIT Chennai in March 2000. After completing the MTech, he has worked as a structural consultant, and since 2007 he has been a builder and developer in Kolhapur. In his in his long career, he has designed various types of structures: residential, commercial buildings, cinema theaters, industrial building, road bridges, RCC retaining walls, direction arches, roads, etc. It would be we will be delighted to hear from him regarding his experience. I welcome Sachin Paranspe sir for the session on structural engineering issues and challenges. I hand over the session to sir. Thank you.
Good afternoon, all. Good afternoon, everybody. I welcome you all for this session. And personally, I feel this is a great opportunity to interact with you all because of this online media. I get this opportunity to connect with you all, not only in Kolhapur, but all over India and abroad. The topic, today's topic is structural engineering issues. So starting with that, before starting with the main topic, I would like to give a small introduction about me. When I graduated from IIT, I started structural designing in Kolhapur. And actually, my father was also a structural designer, so structural engineering and civil engineering was in my blood. And this is the only thing which I really wanted to be. And because I personally believe that if you like what you do, then there is no limit to what you can achieve, because there has to be a self-driven force in whatever career you choose. So when I started structural designing, it was but because I had the background of IIT, one thing was very sure, that my basics were very clear. And when your basics are very clear, it's like a foundation of a structure, and on that foundation you can build any structure which can withstand all the natural forces. So I believe that once all your basics are clear, that whatever project, that opportunity you get to design, you can do that by applying your basic knowledge. And over the years, you get enough experience to design and construct challenging projects also. To start with, I would like to show few of my projects so that you get a brief idea of the projects which I have executed. Yeah. Now this is the current project which I have designed and constructed, executed as a builder and developer, also as a structural designer. This is a project of 54 units, and it was just completed 1 month back. Now, I will also showcase a few projects which were structurally challenging, and then I will explain how to meet the challenges. This is the project which you see is a computer image. This is it was made on computer, and it was a challenge. It is just like stacking books one over the other. And then this is the actual image. This is a project in Rajarampuri, Kolhapur. The challenge here was to build all floors are skewed, and all the slabs, all the layout was not similar to the floors above and below. Then this is one Square 9 and Palladium project in Kolhapur. This is the night view of that project. This is a township named as Punya Pravaha, which had 3 buildings, one podium. Here you can see that podium. And this itself is a very big project structurally also. Then this is another project called Punya Parva, almost 250 flats. And this is, I think, ground basement plus ground plus 12 floors. Then this is another project, Square 9, next to Palladium project. This is the actual image of the project. And this is Wonder 11 project in Kolhapur itself. This is 11 story. And this is my own project, Swapna Prabha. And this is again the first project. We'll stop with this. So basically, as a structural designer, the main your work starts once the architectural plans are ready. I'm talking only this now. I will be talking only about buildings and not other projects. Your main work starts once the architectural plans are ready. Now, when you get to see the architectural plans, the expectations from a structural designer are to fulfill the functionality of the project. So it starts with column positioning, beam layout, and overall structural grid. Then at the same time, while doing this, you also have to look into the factor that about the strength and stability of the building. Now, strength is one thing, stability is another. Strength is the building. Strength is something which you design the building to resist vertical or static loads, and stability is something you need the building to be stable for other forces than the regular forces like earthquake or wind forces. And once you do this, the structural grid, it goes to the architect, they approve it, and then your real work starts. Then you do the analysis of the project, you design various members, and then you execute the drawings, on the basis of which construction of the project starts. It is very important that you are ready with all the drawings of all the floors, so that the project runs very smoothly. If you give part drawings, then you may land in trouble later on. So generally, once you have designed all the members, only then you should release the first foundation drawing and then other drawings. Now your basic starts with the foundation drawing. Foundation, as a structural engineer, you should able to communicate with the structure. You should know how the structure is behaving, or you should make the structure behave the way you want. This is very important factor. Because when you design a particular foundation, you should know how this building will function, and so how you should design the foundation so that the building resists all types of forces. Now the foundation depends on the strength of the substrata. It can be various. It can be hard rock. It can be soft rock, soft murum. It can be soft soil. It can be black cotton soil. Depending on that, you have to design the foundation as per the strata. So your basic work starts there. Now once the foundation is complete, then comes the other floor drawings. Now you have to also see that your building is stable structurally for static load as well as earthquake load. Now earthquake is a phenomena which may or may not occur. So, but your building has to be strong enough to resist an earthquake which has happened in the past in that area. So depending upon this, there are various structural elements which you should design, like column orientation, beam depths, and then all these things, and the strength of the columns on the outer side and inner side. All these things come into picture when you design a multi-story building. At the same time, the column positioning, column orientation, it has to be such that you have to cater parking requirements, the driveways, and then the floor, on the floors you have lobbies, then you have staircases, you have lift shafts. All these things you have to take into consideration for the strength of the building. Accordingly, you can design and execute the project. And the other most important thing is, after looking after the strength and stability, one other thing which comes into picture, which rather a client expects from you, is an economical design. If you go after strength and stability, but you should also look to it that you are not hampering the economy of the project, because a structural, the cost that you put in is almost 30% of the overall project cost. So if you run after strength and stability at the same time, if you lose on economy, then that is not acceptable. So the main thing that comes into picture is an optimum design. Now, optimum design is something which should satisfy the client and which should satisfy you also. This is a win-win situation. You can say that is an optimum design and drawing. Now, your drawing should be very self-explanatory. The client, once the drawings are executed on site, you should not get queries repeatedly about any thing in the drawing. The drawing should be self-explanatory. They should be readable, and there should be error-free. This is a very important thing, and they should that your drawing should speak for yourself on the site, so that when you make site visits, there the work which is done will be perfect as per your drawings. Now, I think whenever you get to design a particular project, every project has some individual features and challenges. So I would like to talk about few projects, 3 projects of me. 3 cases I will take into consideration, and I'll explain what challenges you face generally and how to solve them. Generally, when you accept a project, you should be confident that you will be able to do it till the end. You should not make the client unhappy both ways. By your service should be perfect, your drawing should be perfect, and in a way it should be also economic. So I would like to take one first case. Sir. Photos. Okay. Yeah, this is visible to everybody?
Yes, yes.
Okay. Now this is a sketch diagram of a typical frame in a building, where you can see this is ground floor, first floor, second floor, third floor, and fourth floor. The one structural thing which challenge was, I was not allowed to take a column in this line and this line because of few aspects about the plot. So I had to take the column inside, and then I had to prop a beam or a column, you can say, this in an oblique fashion. And then after that, all vertical columns here were supported by this oblique column. Now, when you give such a design, you should be very sure that at this point, you have to tie this backwards. This was possible because this was done both ways. So the building automatically stays in equilibrium because this point and this point was tied by this B. But then this had to be done because of the site requirements. And this project can be seen in this slide. Which slide is there? No, I want the other photo side. Project photos. Stop. Yeah. If this is visible to everyone, you can see in this project, you can see the oblique column sequence in this frame. You can see here 1, 2, 3, and then 4, 5, 6. The column, this vertical column was terminated at first floor, and then this oblique column continued till the top. So this is a project which I have executed myself plus designed. So I was very much confident about this design, and simply because I think all the basics which we learn, on the basis of that I could execute this design. This slide back. Now, if this is visible to everyone, you can see this is a sketch diagram of a frame of a building. The architectural requirement was they wanted this space to be column free. I was allowed to have columns here in the parking floor and even on the above floor, second, third, fourth, fifth, but I was not allowed to have columns here. In a way, I could have denied this by saying that it is not possible. You have to take columns here. This is structurally not possible. So it could easily have been given up. But then as a structural designer, I believe in accepting challenges. So I took this as a challenge, and I designed this column by keeping these columns on either side and in a balanced fashion. So here you can see the load put by this column on this beam was balanced by this column, and then same thing here, the load put by this column was balanced by the load by this column. So in a way you can see this T is balanced, this T is balanced, and then this middle member here, it was just spanning between this point and this point, just like a simply supported beam. So eventually the design came out to be very economic also and stable also. This thing I will show you in the project photograph. It is visible here. These are the 4 columns kept on a very strong beam, and this was the clubhouse which had to be column free, and this is that point where this frame was designed. Now the thing is that while designing this, you have to cross check on deflections also. Just like you have to design the beam just like a pile cap. In a way, you should not allow even 1 mm deflection. So the beam depth and the strength of the column is to be very strong. And at the same time, you have to also check for earthquake. You have to be very sure that whenever you execute a project, and when you design a particular thing, you have to be very sure that you have cross-checked everything, because the drawings that you issue in site are the site will be executed as per the drawings that you give. So you should be very confident about your drawings and about your design. Just photo. Case study. If, as you can see here in this image, this is a commercial project. Initially, this was totally an architectural concept to have skew floors. Here you can see not this floor and the above floor and below floor, they are not similar. It just like a book was stacked, books are stacked one over the another. So I had initially I had a meeting with the architect and he confirmed with me that this is structurally possible. Only then we went ahead with designing this project. The main thing in this project was, you can see this white beam here. This is the perimeter of the building, and all the columns are only on this perimeter. There are no internal columns. All the columns are on the corner and one at the center, and there are no internal columns. And the thing which we skewed was this projections. And after designing and the building was executed, and this is the real image of that project. Here you can see that the project is executed exactly as the architect wanted. All the floors are skew. The main thing is the slabs which are projecting from the beam are 6 feet, almost above 6 feet. The main challenge here was these slabs had to be projected from the beam bottom. So the width of the beam has to be increased and it had to be designed for torsion. So when you are sure about this, you can go ahead with this design. And then another thing is, you have to take a deflection check for all the corners of this slab, because these are the points where the slab, they are supposed to sag the maximum. And also you have to check that the durability aspect, it should not happen that once in a year or two, it should not show deformations. So this has to be lifelong. This sagging should be zero throughout the life of the project. And we achieved it. And this building, as you can see, this is the actual photograph, and this can be seen in Rajarampuri, Kolhapur. Now, I don't want to disclose the identity of this building, but I was not the structural consultant or designer of this project, because I was busy with my own projects and also some other projects I was designing. So I had declined or rejected this project. But the client was, I had a very good relation with the client. So he appointed me as a proof consultant. And the main thing about this project are these slabs, which you can see 1, 2, 3, or you can say 1, 2, 3, and 4. Now, initially these 4 columns were not there in the initial design. They were not there. Only this slab was just like this slab, freestanding. The span of this slab from this point to this point is 50 feet. This is 50 feet. And the challenge was to design a beam which can resist the load of a garden. The garden was proposed here, where the slab was sunk and a filling of almost 1 to 1.5 feet of soil was expected. So being a proof consultant, I was also requested to make a site visit before casting of this slab. And when I made that, it was designed by some other structural designer, not from Kolhapur. I had made it sure, I had predicted that this slab is not safe and it is prone to an accident. It is possible that this slab may collapse. But then, unfortunately, my proposal or my suggestion was ignored or superrun by this basic structural designer. He said it is safe and nothing to worry about it. Then this slab was casted and it was standing freely, no problem at all. It was perfectly okay. Then as you can see, the height between this floor and this floor is 30 feet. These are 3 floors in between. Same case here. This was the same case here. When this slab was casted, its shuttering was resting on this slab, which is 30 feet, which was perfectly braced and it had no issues, it had no problem. When this shuttering was removed, the slab was freely standing. Now, after 3 months, almost after 3 months, this slab was being casted. I hope you all can see this. This slab was being casted and the shuttering was rested on this slab. And eventually, as this slab was weak, it could not take the load that shuttering was imposing on this slab, and this slab sagged considerably. Sagged considerably, which resulted in collapse of this slab 30 feet down on this slab. So this was a major mishap on the site, but luckily, unfortunately, there were no deaths reported. But imagine a lumped mass where the depth of the beam was 1200 mm, slab was 200 mm. All this fell 30 feet down on the slab beneath. So after this, many agencies from Pune, Mumbai, Bangalore, they had visited, but nobody was ready to take the retrofittation work, as there were visible cracks in these columns. In these columns which were supporting this beam, there were visible cracks. And it was a major decision to be taken about, because all these floors were standing, there was a major decision to be taken. So eventually I took the responsibility of this. Then we had to come up with 4 columns here, as you can see in this picture, which were not initially proposed, but we had to come up to support this slab because already it had cracked. There was no point in demolishing this and again casting. So we took 4 more columns to support this slab. Then these columns which were here, we had to use all props to support the above floors, and we had demolished this column on the site, and we had done jacketing of this column, and then we had recast it, and again we had checked, we had done all the NDT tests, and it was safe. So we did, the jacketing was enough. Now the question was to redesign this slab and recast and reconstruct. So initially, when this slab this beam was designed, it was designed as a simply supported beam, which ended here. This beam did not have continuity to this up till this point, or on this end, it had no continuity here. So while redesigning, we demolished few part here. Then we constructed a beam from this point to that point. So eventually it got 2 supports here. And after that, when the concreting was done, and after 21 days or 25 days, or you can say 30 days, we removed the shuttering. And I took that challenge. I was standing beneath this floor when the de-shuttering was being done. I was so much confident about this that this beam will not sag because it had been anchored back. And eventually now, if you visit the project, you can see it is standing very handsomely. So these are the things which you don't learn in college. They don't teach you. It is not possible to teach these things. Either you can have case studies, you can have site visits, but how to tackle these situations, it totally depends on the basic knowledge that you have, or the basic knowledge that you learn from your college. The colleges and the professors and the teachers, sirs, they really try hard to teach you. But when we are in college, we generally ignore, and so our basics are not that strong. So I strongly recommend that whatever you learn in college, your basics, if your basics are strong, you can deal with all these challenging situations in structural engineering. And I believe that real estate field is something which is highly creative, and structural designer is like an artist. Structural designing can be boring, or on the other hand, it can be very interesting. It is like an art. If you practice it from your heart, you can give the best product to society. And I really feel that if a project looks beautiful, then not only the architect, has his contribution, but the structural designer should also have his contribution in such a way that he should design all the members such that you should the functionality and the beauty of the building remains intact, or you should enhance it, and you should be proud about your work, and you should try to give more and more better results. And for that, I believe that you should continuously work on many projects. You should not ignore small projects, and you should not run only after the big projects. Even a small project teaches you so many things that big projects may not teach you. So I sincerely believe that make your basics strong, and there is no limit to what you can learn. You should always keep learning, and I think learning can take you anywhere in this world. So with this, I think I will conclude with my issues of structural designing. Actually, they are not issues, but challenges, you can say, and which I feel you should accept it, you should face it, and you should learn from it. And I believe that I am now working in this field for 20 years, and after 20 years of experience, and I learned from my mistakes. Even I have done many mistakes in the start, but then I did not run away from it. So I learned from it, and now I also work as a proof consultant, just like you can say, like a doctor for many projects. And I have been designing and executing projects in Kolhapur for the last 20 years. So I believe that I hope I have met your expectations, and we can proceed with question answers if you have questions. If you have, and I would like the next session to be interactive. Can you hear, or somebody will raise?
Yeah, I would request the participants to please interact and ask the question.
Sir, good afternoon, sir. I have a question.
Yes, sir.
My name is Dr. Subramanya.
Yes.
My question to Sachin sir is that since we are not experts in structural designing,
Yes, sir.
so how can we ascertain that the flat that we are buying or the building that is being constructed is structurally strong? See, everybody cannot be technically. I am not a technical person. I am a management student, so management teacher. So how can I check whether the structure that is being built is foolproof?
I will put the question to sir. Sir, there is a question from Dr. Subramaniam Iyer. He says that everybody is not structurally sound in knowledge, but when we purchase a flat or an apartment, how can we ensure that the building where the flat exists is structurally strong? That is the question.
They can hear me? Okay. This is a very good question. I tell you, because every time we design a project, we get into the shoes of the customer. The very first thing that we look into is that when a customer or a flat buyer walks into the flat, he should get a very good feeling about it. Now, when I say a good feeling, is that apart from, I'm not talking about the interiors of the flat, but when you enter a flat, you get to see the columns, the beams, the layout, and you get a very nice feeling when the layout is perfect. Now I cannot explain it to here what is a perfect layout, but it should merge with the walls. There should not be any unnecessary offsets, and it should give clear space to the user. There should not be unnecessary columns in between. So it should serve the purpose for which the building is built. Now the other thing is that you have to ensure that the building is strong. Now there is a new law which has come into effect, which is RERA, Real Estate Regulatory Act, in which you get to know who is the structural consultant of your project, and you can contact him. Once you visit that site, you get the contact number of the structural consultant. You can talk to him, You can have a look at the drawings which he has issued and which norms he has followed, and or you can consult other structural consultant. You can take him to the site. You can make him interact with the structural designer who has already executed that project. In a way, you can get to know that the structural whether the building is structurally sound or not. And in general, the life of a building uh, at present is maximum, you can say, 40 years. Generally a project comes for redevelopment after 40 years. Now when you have to see whether the building is structurally strong or not, if you are buying an old flat, this is very important. But even if you are buying a new flat, you can contact the structural consultant and you can have a look at all the drawings he has issued, which is possible because of this RERA, Real Estate Regulatory Act. I hope I have answered this question.
Yes, yes, sir. I'm thankful, sir, for your answer. It's up to.
Can I see other questions?
Yes, thank you, sir. I think there are other questions also.
Okay.
There are some questions in the chat box.
Okay.
I will take the next question.
Yeah.
This question is from Dr. Kishore Kumar. He has asked the question, how the present structures are environmentally friendly designed? How do you take care of the environmentally friendly design in the present structures?
Okay. Now, when we say environment friendly, now basically when we build a building, the main thing is that we need to have we need to satisfy the requirements of strength and stability. But along with that, it is very important to have environmental friendly products. Now, the sand which we earlier we used for construction was river sand. It was natural river sand. But now in present days, what we do is just the way you use aggregates, coarse and fine aggregates. Now we use you can say a sand which is artificial, just like aggregates. So which is made in silos, and we call it as an artificial sand. And then what we do is we get a mixed design done using this artificial sand, and then basis on the basis of that mixed design, the strength which we get, we use it on site. So in a way, we are not using natural river sand. The second thing is the bricks that we use in a project. Earlier there used to be red bricks, but now we are using fly ash bricks, then lightweight bricks. So these fly ash bricks are also environmental friendly, and in a way this is an attempt to have environmental friendly design project. And challenges, if you can say, in this are that you have to check the strength of the raw material that you are using, and we have to see to it that they are being used in exact proportion that we have designed it.
So good afternoon, sir. I have a question. So this is Kumaravel Raja. I'm Assistant Professor, Shastra School of Law.
Okay. Yes, sir. Please ask the question. Yes, sir.
So I have a doubt as well as some clarifications. Like I'm basically from Tamil Nadu. Like metropolitan cities are slowly developing almost all the part of India. So by using the this low weight sense, it cause any kind of what we call instability in the construction, because due to developing the movement of vehicles, heavy vehicles, will it create any kind of problems to the buildings?
We will ask Mr. Swasan. Yes, I think it's an interesting question. Sir, there is a question from our participant. He is residing in.
Yes, I'm Kumaravel Raja, sir. I'm Kumaravel Raja, Assistant Professor, Shastra School of Law.
I think he's assistant professor in college. I think the question.
Yes, sir. Shastra School of Law.
Yes, due to the movement of vehicles in Tamil Nadu, does it have any structural issues? because of the increase in the traffic or something of that type.
So the metropolitan cities like even Mumbai, Delhi, you can see the skyscrapers.
Yeah, I can hear.
So
I can hear.
basically, in the name of the design, they have there is a lead strengthening in the building. You can see the big veranda of the bedrooms or everything. But by using the less, this artificial sands or M sands or even the less weight bricks, so there will be no stability in the building, right? So will it be any causes because suddenly if there is any shakes or constructing like metro trains under the land, so definitely that will create a problems, right? Will the RERA will take care of any initiative steps to making the modification in this?
Your first question was because of traffic, you're saying? Am I
Not
audible?
only traffic, no, not only in traffic, sir. See, using the less weight bricks, so definitely the
Lightweight
strength of-
bricks. Okay. Yeah,
lightweight bricks.
I'll come to that point. Yeah.
Because I could see in even many areas, so you can see the skyscrapers, but
Yeah.
there is a huge differences with the proper
Yes.
bricks and proper reverse sand that will create a good stability in the building. So
Yeah.
nowadays the government are restricting all those contents, so lightweight bricks as well as the artificial sands or whether it's eco-friendly, because my father used to tell that by using this kind of lightweight bricks or these M sands and all, that will create health issues for the the humans. So whether it's true, whether you can appreciate the using lightweight bricks or this kind of M sands and all.
No. First, I'll come to this lightweight bricks. See, this lightweight bricks. They have their own agenda. You can say that now you have to be judgmental where to use it. Whether you're building your own house or you're building a multi-story building. Now, the beneficial thing about this lightweight bricks is it has a less weight. So when you when you construct multi-story buildings, the dead weight of the building reduces, and basically when an earthquake occurs, there is no external force which acts on the building. The basic is the ground beneath vibrates. These vibrations are transferred to the building, and the self weight of the building makes it vibrate more. So the self weight of the building acts in a lateral direction, which causes the building to sway. Now, if the self weight of the building is reduced, we can control this sway in a way the disaster caused by earthquakes will be reduced. But at the same time, other than earthquakes, I am not sure, or I am not sure about the strength of this building, strength of these bricks, which will be how durable they will be, how healthy they will be regarding to health issues. I will not be able to comment on that, but you have to be very judgmental when you use it. And if there are heavy cantilevers, where you have to reduce the dead load on the beam, or in a project, you can use it, but again, you should not use it throughout. I very much believe that in the first 1/3 height of the building, you should go for some heavy material, and then as you go above, you can reduce the weight of this. You can use these bricks, but not for all floors. And when you use these bricks, you also have to ensure the other things like plastering and everything. And as far as the sand is concerned, now as natural reverse sand is not an option anymore here in Maharashtra specifically, we have to go for this artificial sand. And just the way we use aggregates, which is made from black stone, this artificial sand is made from the similar stone. So I don't think it would cause any health issues, and in a way it will help us to have a balance in the environment by reducing the use of reverse sand.
Hello, sir.
Thanks so much, sir.
I'm
Thanks,
Dr.
sir.
Kiran. I have a question, sir.
Yes.
Yes, please go on.
Hello, Mr. Sachin, sir. I have a question. Yeah.
Yes, sir, please ask.
You actually showed us the buildings, multi-story buildings and the apartments which you had designed, sir. So I would like to know the structural ductile detailing was followed for those buildings.
Yes.
Definitely, right?
Yes.
Okay. It was as per the BIS
IS
standard
13920, yes.
13920, I guess.
Yes.
Okay, so sir, if it usually falls in the category of low-rise buildings, the apartments which we saw in your presentation. If that's the case, usually the trend for when we try to design a multi-story building, we go for an additional factor of safety by incorporating dampers. Usually, in case of a seismic event, usually we try to adopt dampers,
Yes.
which would be really costly to bear on. When we try to see from economic point of view, it won't be that feasible for a client who would be interested only in going for a mid-rise building. But whereas in a
Yes.
commercial high-rise skyscraper, a client would definitely try to implement it.
Definitely.
So in the event where if you're trying to design, if I'm trying to design, because what you said is it was an inspiring talk. So if I'm trying to design for a client, if I'm being a structural consultant for their building, which may fall in a seismic zone of 5, like Darbag in Bihar, Darbanga, then the life of even poor as well as the rich is equally important. So
Yeah, definitely.
I would be designing a very small low-rise building. So if the client is not interested in going for a damper, so how will I actually overcome or negotiate with this seismic activity in a zone 5 classification? How will I convince the client, or how would I try to intelligently design or detail the building in case of that particular event? That's my question.
Yeah. When we design a building or a project for earthquake, we have to understand that there is no external force which is acting on a building like a wind force, or you can say like a tsunami. When you design a building for, say, if you have to resist a tsunami or a strong wind, yeah, the design aspect is totally opposite to what you design for earthquake. For earthquake, flexible is strong. So this should be the policy when you design a building for earthquake. Now, if you say that by using dampers the structure or the project is becoming uneconomic, then you have to design the building in such a way that you have to increase the number of columns in such a way that the lateral resistance of the building is increased. And the orientation of the column is very important. Let us say a building is say 10 meters wide and 50 meters long. In that case, suppose it is oriented north-south, then all your columns should be oriented east-west. Means you should try to have all your columns oriented east-west, so that if you consider your entire building as a column, you will have strength along the minor axis, because most of the building will sway east-west in case of any earthquake. It will not sway in a north-south direction. So if you design your columns or orientation in east-west direction, in my project which I have done, all the columns were oriented along the width. Not a single column was oriented along the length. So when you place or orient your columns, you can see that even for major earthquakes, the sway of the building is very limited because of the increase in lateral resistance. Plus, above that, when you increase the resistance, you have to provide ductile detailing to the beams and columns. In a way, you are strong and as well as you are flexible. So this will solve your problem, and you can achieve an optimum design.
Thank you, sir. Thank you. I have one more question, last question to you, sir. Sir, we are actually trying to go as per the codal provisions.
Yes.
As structural engineers, we would try to do the ductile detailing, but we don't have exact measurement or quantification or exact feel or how actually the structure behaves in case of real events.
Mm-hmm.
Now, adding these dampers, we have a damper property and we know what is the stiffness of the damper. We may have little control over it, but still it becomes unknown that how actually it may behave in terms of a real event. How can this be addressed?
No, I always believe that if you use dampers, then we see when we design a building with dampers, we have to actually see it is possible that dampers may fail. So they may not fail entirely, they may fail partially. This is also possible because earthquake is an event which happens, you can say, once in a lifetime of a building. So in that case, along with dampers, you should also follow the basic principles of earthquake resistance. In this way, I guess you can achieve the result using dampers. So you can be pretty sure about its behavior when you use dampers by not relying 100% on the damper.
Thank you, sir. Thank you, Mr. Sachin, sir. It was nice interacting with you, sir.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you.
Any more questions?
So there are another questions in the chat box.
Mhm.
Suvarna Lata madam has asked, any diploma in structural design is there? Any diploma course? is
No.
available?
No, structural designing is a specialization which I guess you do after graduating as a civil engineer. And structural designing it needs a very good background of physics and mathematics. Because to be a good structural designer, you should know the behavior of a structure. You have to visualize. You have to, before you design, before you do the drawing, you have to visualize the project. You have to visualize the layout. You have to visualize everything. So, and how you have to visualize how the structure will behave, how much it will, how it will resist the loading. See, this load, it's a load path. It is definitely when you construct a project or when you design a project, it's the loads that you transfer to the ground. So that path should also be visible, and you should have a clear picture of the behavior of the structure. So, which I guess, which you can develop only after having basic knowledge of civil engineering. So I don't guess there will be, I don't think there is a diploma in structural engineering. That cannot be.
Thank you, sir. There is another question by Shashank Goswami. Proof checking is required in which situations?
Yes.
Are there any particular situations where proof checking is required?
Yes. Now, proof checking is required especially for government projects. Generally, when you design a government projects, especially in my area, we have a proof consultant, so that the government is very much sure that the drawings or designs with which they have received from the consultant are safe and sound. In a private project, generally, there is no such rule you can apply to have a proof consultant. Generally, a proof consultant comes into a picture for high-rise buildings or a long span, where you have a long span beams, or where you have something which you don't construct regularly. In those cases, you need a proof consultant, which I believe you should have, so that, because to avoid the after effects of that, you should have a proof consultant just to cross verify that we are on the safer side. I believe this.
Any other questions from the participants? I request you to put in the chat box or you can ask.
Meanwhile, I want to ask one question.
Yes, there is a question.
Good afternoon, sir.
Yes, sir.
Sir, am I audible?
Yes. You can please go ahead with the question, sir.
Good afternoon, sir. Sir, my name is Suleiman. I am from Jammu and Kashmir. Sir, I have so many queries regarding structural designing, but I will ask a very short question. Sir, my question is that is it necessary for stilt flooring to give a shear wall if the height of structure is less than 15 meter or less than 10 meter?
Stilt flooring or shear wall?
Is it necessary to give a shear wall in a stilt flooring of height around 12 meters?
12 meters?
Yes, sir, 12 meters.
The height of the building?
12 meter, around 12 meter, 10
No.
to 12 meter.
See, I'll explain this. A shear wall is a long column, is a column in a way. Now, why we call it a shear wall is, Its basic purpose is to carry vertical as well as lateral load. Now, as I said, in case of an earthquake, there are no external forces which act on the building. It is the self-weight of the building. So when the height of the building, you say, which is 12 meters or 15 meters, the lateral resistance of the building can be achieved by columns itself. So you don't need a shear wall. It's not that you cannot provide it, but you don't need a shear wall. All the purpose for which you use a shear wall, they are achieved by using columns. So for heights, we have not used shear walls even up to a height of 24 meters. So, but definitely above 24 meter, what happens is when you provide columns at a spacing of 2 meters, 3 meters, 4 meters, they start to connect each other. So it is beneficial to have a shear wall where you can reduce the width by increasing the length, and you can increase the lateral resistance tremendously by using a shear wall. So it is especially beneficial only for high-rise structures. High-rise structures, I'm talking about. You can say these are zone-wise. So I stay in a zone which is a seismic zone 3, and here generally 21 any project or any building above 24 meter is susceptible to earthquake. So we provide shear walls for a height above 24 meters. But if you go in other seismic zones, then it is better to have shear wall if the purpose is not served by columns.
So one more question I want to ask, that the picture you showed, the geometry of that structure, like bookshelf type structure.
Yes, yes.
Sir, I want to know about the projection criteria that you took. Cantilever parts on what, as per IS standards, on what criteria that
I'll tell you. Yeah, the basic criteria when you design when I was designing that project was there was a beam which was essentially running on the perimeter of the building. Its width was 450 and depth was 900, and I had slabs projecting from the beam top and beam bottom. Now, generally, when the slabs are projecting from the beam top, we have an anchorage behind in the presence of a slab. Correct? You got my point?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Yes. The reinforcement in the top cantilever slab can be anchored back into the slab. But when you design the slab which is at the bottom of the beam, that causes torsion on the beam. So it can cause the beam to twist. Eventually, it will cause a sag for itself. So the reinforcement of that slab was like a hook, which was continued through the beam. So and the width of the beam was 25% of the slab span. So I got enough support by increasing the width of the beam. So I could and by improving the fixity by the reinforcement detailing, I could resist the sagging of the tip of that cantilever slab. And this was very important because after designing, after executing, if you must have seen that slabs deform over a period of time. So now almost this building is standing for 5 years, but there is no deformation, there is no crack formation, and serviceability clause of the IS code has been met here, where there are no deformations in the slab.
Sir, what about the deflection criteria? Because the deflection are directly proportional to the thickness.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. By providing the detailing, I have reduced the, I have not reduced, I have restricted the deflections.
So what is the span for that projected part?
6 feet, and to reduce the overall weight of the, because see, the slab is going to sag by its own weight,
Yes,
right?
Yes,
There was the slab which was projecting from the beam bottom, there was no other major brick wall or any other live load on it. So the depth, the thickness of the slab at the tip was less, 100 mm, and 175 mm near the beam.
Okay. That means it is a tapered shape.
Yes, yes. And this is possible for beam bottom slab. For top slab, it was not possible to increase the depth, so that was kept as uniform. Yeah.
See, any other questions?
Mr. Sachin sir, I have one last question on behalf of everyone, I guess.
Okay.
Sir, I think would you suggest, because you are an experienced structural engineer, I think we are budding structural engineers. We would like for you to share us some books which would try to give us it be a jump start. I am referring this G+3 by Mr. Shah and Karve as a beginner structural engineer. So if there are any books which would be helpful to us for starting
Yes.
structural engineers.
Yeah. When I was in IIT Chennai, I had one professor, Devdas Menon. He was teaching to us also, and we were using his own book. And after passing out from IIT, especially for structural designing of buildings, it was, you can say, it was like a Bible. Now, when I was graduating from Walchand College of Sangli, I had learned about RCC design and everything, but I don't know what, they were all typical cases, just like you. It was like a school stuff. But this book, which especially I'm mentioning, by Devdas Menon, Reinforced Concrete Design. It clears all the basics, and if you read it thoroughly, if you study it properly, you can design any structure, because the basics are so clearly given in it, that on that, it just like ABCD. On that, you can design any structural building that you can come up with.
Thank you very much, sir. Thank you very much, sir.
And one more thing I would like to clear is, it is my policy, may not apply to everybody. Most of the projects here, I have done single-handed. That when you can see this four high-rise buildings, right from drawing, detailing, site supervision, all was done single-handedly, because there was a time when I used to work alone. Afterwards, I had employed staff. I could get the work done from them. But initially, I used to work alone. Everything, totally, right from A to Z. So, when I employed staff, I could easily judge that what work they are doing and how it needs to be done. Another thing which was followed is, my office is paperless. I do not use a single piece of paper. Everything is on computer, and I do not have a check print and everything. All the calculations. I have developed my own software for designing of this RCC designing. Then I basically use STAAD for analysis and AutoCAD for drawings. And there is one more thing which I would like to convey is, when you issue a drawing, you should not just give the design where you give the schedule of the slabs or the beams, and you should give detailing also. Detailing is important because you should dictate terms on the side how the reinforcement detailing of a beam or a column should be done, where the top bar should be lapped, where the bottom bar should be lapped, how the stirrups should be placed, how should be the spacing of the stirrups, where should be the hook of the stirrups, how should be the hooks in for stirrup reinforcement in columns, how should be the detailing at beam column junction. These details have to go on site, so that you dictate the terms and not the contractor should dictate the term. Everything on site should be as per our drawing. Only then you can achieve the results which you intend in your design. Otherwise, if you design and somebody is detailing for you, then it can cause a problem for you, because wrong detailing can also cause a lot of problems in a structure. So I sincerely believe that right from A to Z, everything you should dictate on site. A structural consultant should dictate.
Thanks a lot, sir. Thanks a lot. And I think hats off to you for your hard work and perseverance. I think you worked on projects single-handedly. I think it is really, really amazing. I think no one would be that courageous to take those projects and handle it singly. It's a Herculean task and daunting task. I mean, hats off, sir.
Thank you very much. Actually, the case is that when I was in college, this is some off track. I'm sharing my some personal thing. My father was also a structural consultant. He was from IIT Powai. But when I was doing my graduation in IIT Chennai, he passed away. So after that, it was like a start from zero. And so I had to start. I could not get his, you can say, back support. And so it was a start from zero. So I have seen, I have learned a lot. Initially, I had made a lot of mistakes, but I learned from it so much that now I also work as a proof consultant for many projects.
Hats off, sir. I think your dad will be definitely proud of you.
Thank you, sir.
Any more questions?
Yes, I think there is one question in the chat box by Ashok Kumar. How do you see RERA impact on realty sector?
Scroll.
Okay.
Page.
The que-
Please go down.
Okay. How do you see RERA?
RERA.
Yeah. Now see, basically I work as a structural consultant, and along with that, I also had a passion of actually constructing buildings. So I also work as a developer. Now, when I was executing a particular project, this RERA came into effect. Now, as I always look to any now I always look to RERA as an opportunity, and because everything was online, I automatically learned, and I started. Eventually, this happened. It was not planned to be, but I also work as I also worked initially in the initial phase. I also worked as a RERA consultant, and the major benefits of RERA are: see, I have to, as a builder, I have to declare who my architect is, who my contractor is, who my structural consultant is, and who is my site supervisor. I have to declare this. So the client who, as there was a question which was asked previously, the client gets a crystal clear image of the project. So if he knows that this is a contractor, this is the architect, he can approach that person and he can ask his personal doubts. He can get the things clear. Just like when you buy a flat, you consult an advocate. So now this, because of RERA, it becomes easy to contact the architect, to the structural consultant, to the contractor, to the supervisor, and everybody who is responsible for executing the project. You can contact them, you can ask them your queries, and these people eventually will be held responsible if anything goes wrong in the project. So client is safeguarded in RERA. So I believe that RERA has always looked after the benefit of the client.
This is Professor Gosavi. Recently, majority of the beams are being seen to have been having the width of 150 mm. But codal provisions are saying that 150 mm wide beams are not allowed.
Yes.
But then for the bricks of 150 mm size, sometimes that is preferred.
Yes.
Up to what height and what is the criteria about whether it should be allowed or should it not be allowed?
Yes, sir. See, in this case, there are many personal opinions. Now, initially, when I started as a structural consultant, this was a case between 2000 and 2005. We had seen consultants designing columns with a width of 150, right, sir?
Yes, sir, absolutely
Yes,
right.
because they wanted to hide the offset of the column in the wall.
Yes.
But after the incidence of Bhuj earthquake, suddenly everybody realized that this is wrong. So you need an incidence to realize what is wrong, correct? This is generally the case here.
Oh.
But see, now when you consider the width of the column, in a width of 150, you have nothing when you leave the cover. 25 mm minimum, which cover, if you leave, we get a core of 100 mm.
Yes.
Right? And whatever strength of a column has to give, it gives from the core.
Yes.
So people realize that they should not use 150 wide columns. Now, in case of beams, the main strength is achieved by tensile reinforcement. We consider, when we design a beam, we consider the section to be cracked and all the tensile load is taken by the beam. Right? And we see to it that it's an under reinforced beam, and the beam failure is by yielding of the steel and not by crushing of the concrete.
Yes.
So I believe the main purpose of the beam, in a frame, it should be when you design a building for earthquake resistance, and if that beam is a member of an earthquake resisting frame, I would suggest that it has to be of width 230 mm, so that it merges with the column.
Yeah.
Okay, so it gives column the enough bracing which is required.
Correct.
The column should behave for its intended purpose. So for that purpose, the width of the beam should be 230 mm, which I believe.
Yeah.
Now, as you go up, if the height of the building increases, and if an earthquake occurs, or when you design a building for earthquake, you can see there is stress reversal in the beam.
Yes.
So the top reinforcement also comes into effect, the bottom reinforcement also comes into effect. So in that case, it is important to have minimum reinforcement criteria you have to follow. And to avoid congestion of that reinforcement, you should have a proper width, and you should allow concreting to be done properly. So I suggest that main beams have to be 230 mm. For high-rise buildings, I would prefer all the beams should be 230 mm. But if you're constructing a ground plus one structure, there you can have a choice, because generally there is no steel floor. There are brick walls which also serve the purpose. So it's individual judgment, but the code cannot be based on individual judgment. So it has to give certain minimum width of the beam. One more thing which I did not mention in the introduction was, when I was in IIT Chennai, and I was doing a project. My thesis was revision of IS 800. My guide was chairman of the committee appointed by Bureau of Indian Standards, and my work which I did in those 6 to 9 months was submitted to my guide. He presented it in front of the committee, and eventually 7 years later, I found that my work was included in the new IS 800.
Great.
So I was really lucky that I could work on such a project. So I can tell you that the way the code thinks. So to avoid individual judgment, it has to give certain minimum width. Now whether to follow it or not is an individual judgment. But you should be confident when you propose a particular.
Yeah. Thank you, sir. Thank you.
So, adding to the previous question of Mr. Sashikant, I think you clearly explained about those negotiating the width of column. The code specifies minimum of 200 mm, minimum of 8 inches. But recently when I was working with a project, one of the architects, we had a fight actually that I had to go for 150 only. So, in terms of those tricky situations, how do you negotiate with architects with all respect to the architects in the house, no offense, I'm only just saying, how do you negotiate the terms with architect when they are so particular about width of the column to be reduced to 150 mm, even though we are trying to highlight about the seismic events? How do you go about it?
In my case, I have not encountered a single event where I was asked to reduce the width of the column. I'm lucky that the architects near around me are aware of this fact. But in your case, I think you have to convince the architect that this is not acceptable. And now how you convince, I cannot tell how to convince, an architect. It's your way. But I think if you are convinced that I should not go for 150, then I don't think the architect can force you. Because in my case, sir, uh, when I get the plan, I do the layout, and I ask the architect to even ask the architect to make few changes in the plan so that I can get moment this lateral resisting frames throughout the height. Now, to achieve now this, if for a newcomer this may be difficult, but eventually over the years, people recognize that when a structural consultant, a particular consultant says that this is not acceptable, then I guess the architect should be convinced with this. But I suggest you never go for 150 width columns.
Thank you, sir. Thank you, sir.
Any questions?
I think, sir, there is one question in the chat box by Mr. Murli Jairam. I will read the question for you. When we go for an alternative material for structural design, for example, stabilized blocks or any other like that, for an high-rise building, can we avoid number column? In that case, what about factor of safety to be considered?
It is for stabilized block, any other layer can you avoid number of columns? In that case, what is stabilized blocks or any other like that for an high-rise buildings? Is he live now? I don't know what is stabilized blocks.
Mr. Murli, are you there?
Yes, sir, I am here.
You can ask the question, sir.
I think I have answered this question. Or this is another one more?
Yes,
Yes, sir. Like nowadays, we go for some stabilized mud blocks where we can avoid columns, where we can only have beams. Here in Bangalore, we go for small rise buildings. But if you go for high rise building, so in that case, can we reduce the number of columns? So that's my question.
Okay, see, all the lateral resistance of the building depends on the columns, number of columns and their orientation. I'm not saying that it should be too high number of columns, and it should not be too less. It should be optimum, and their orientation should also be is also important. But reducing the number of columns is not acceptable. See, if now here we also have we need to provide pile foundations. Generally, what people do is try to reduce the number of columns, and but in pile foundation, I suggest rather than having 4 piles for 1 column, I believe in having 2 piles for 2 columns. You got my point?
Yeah, yes, sir.
Yeah. So I don't trust in reducing the number of columns as far as they are serving the purpose.
Thank you, sir.
Sir, there is another question in the chat box. Mohammed Haq.
Yeah.
Sir, can we increase the number of bars in a column of 9 by 9? If we do this, will it be more strengthened?
Is he live now?
Mr. Mohammed Haq, are you there?
Mustafizul Haq.
Yeah. Yes, sir.
Yes,
Sir, can we increase the number of bars in 9-inch dimensions column?
Okay, let me answer this. When we design a column, can I also ask you a question?
Yes, sir.
Yeah. When we design a column, let us say it is of size, it is 9-inch by 9-inch, right?
Yes, sir.
Yeah. Okay, or of any size. Who takes the major part of the load, concrete or steel?
Steel, sir.
Okay. See, concrete is very strong in compression and very weak in tension.
Yes,
The
sir.
basic behavior of column I will try to explain. See, now if you do not provide reinforcement at all, the column, although it is strong in compression, because of this height, it will tend to collapse or fail, right? If you do not provide reinforcement at all, right? Now, when we provide a reinforcement, we generate a core in between the reinforcement. Now that core is made strong by using stirrups. When the load is applied, the concrete in the core takes maximum load. It takes the load because it is confined. Now, imagine a case where the steel stirrup is replaced by a thread. In that case, it will try to bulge out. So, the strength of that stirrup gives strength to the core, which eventually increase the strength of the concrete. Now, if you try doing this, if you are limited to a size of 9" by 9" column, then I don't think that beyond a particular limit you should increase the reinforcement, because that will cause a lot of congestion and the basic purpose will not be solved, because the core will remain the same and the strength will not be achieved beyond a particular limit. So I suggest you increase the size of the column rather than increasing the reinforcement in the column.
Okay, sir. Thank you. Thank you, sir.
I think we will take the last question. I think I request Kishore Kumar sir to please go ahead with the question. And he has put in the chat box. I would request him to ask the question.
Yes, sir, namaste. My question is that, like, as a design engineer, when you're dealing with the government-sponsored projects as well as the private projects, what are the challenges you faced as a design engineer between the private projects as well as government projects? Thank you.
When we go for private projects, generally in my case, I'm the boss, because there is nobody to question me in private projects, because it's an agreement. It's like an agreement where they trust you, they trust your services, they trust your drawings, your design, everything. So it's based on trust, and that trust comes from experience. So this is case for private projects. In case of government sponsored projects, it's a totally different arena. I have done 2 government sponsored projects. It was an auditorium, both were auditorium, and they were also high-rise structures. So in government sponsored projects, generally, which I have seen, economy is not a factor. It has to be safe. That is the first priority. And your work gets cross-checked, or you have to get it cross-checked from the panel, from the consultants who are on the panel of the government. So it's in a way, it's a challenging task where when your design comes under scrutiny, and you have to comply with that also. But in a way, it is beneficial. You learn many things from it when your design gets checked, and the government wants to be double sure when they build up a particular project. So it has a proof consultant, and your work gets increased a little bit, nothing more than that. Basically.
Thank you, sir. I think it's a very most positive reply you have given, actually. Generally, people go for the all kind of complaints and other things, but it's a very most positive approach you have actually in your work. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Sir, allow me to have one last question.
Okay.
My question is for common layman, because I'm not an engineer.
Okay.
We had a very bad situation of floods.
Yes.
In Kolhapur.
Yes.
And this region especially.
Yes.
So my question is that some places actually the water literally fed the colonies and even villages.
Yes.
And at some places it was not like that, but they say that there is an indirect pressure of water from the ground.
Okay.
Now a common fear in people's mind is that my house is 10 years old, 20 years old, 50 years old and all that.
Yes.
But I'm not a government agency to do some structural audit or something.
Yes.
So how do I understand that my house is safe after a flood, What could be the acid test for a common man in a village or, somebody from a flat? I just bought it, I don't know anything. But, people threaten in marketing. This is under that region, this region, and water may come or something. So to help in taking decision also and to know the strength of my house.
Now you can say fortunately or unfortunately, there was a flood case, very high flood in Kolhapur in the year 2005. You must be remembering.
Right.
So after that, a red zone came into that gave birth to a zone called red zone.
Right.
Where you can expect heavy floods once in 10 years or something like that.
Right.
Let me tell you, the first building which was being constructed in that red zone was designed by me.
Okay.
And I had designed, and for the first time, I had designed a building which was standing in floods.
Okay.
So I remember in the year 2005, I was that time just 5 years of engineering, 5 years of consultancy. I took my bike and I went to see whether my building is standing or not.
Okay.
So that was the first thing, that was the first challenge for me, and it was standing very handsomely, and it was parking plus some 7, 8, 9 floors. And all this parking floor was totally submerged in water. But then I remembered the pile work which we had done there, because there was no strata, we had done piling.
Okay.
That piling had gone down deep until 10 meters.
Okay.
And there was no chance that flood water could affect the stability of the building. Strength I'm not talking. See, strength is something which the building can carry regular load. Stability is something.
Yes.
If it is not stable, it cannot have its own strength.
Sure.
So the flood water, if you see the flood water 10 feet maximum, its effect is 10 feet below ground.
Mm-hmm.
So when you imagine or you visualize a particular thing, the ground level water, it's not totally flooded. Okay. It's only 10 feet below ground level. Okay. Leave apart the groundwater, but that is limited only for 15 days.
Okay.
Now, when you design a particular, when you do pile designing, there is something called negative skin friction, which you take into consideration. You take into consideration all these factors when you design a pile foundation. And in that particular building, I remember we had done pressure piling, we had done bulbs, we had done everything to protect the building from floods. Now, as a layman, if you are situated near to river, it all depends on the strata. The strength of the building is not hampered due to floods, but the stability of the building is hampered. So it depends on type of strata beneath your building. So the main thing you should check is the foundation rather than anything else. Okay. So if the foundation is stable, then you need nothing to worry.
Okay. Thank you very much. Thank you. Yes, sir. You can continue.
I think we are about to end this session now. I think it was a very inspiring session. I think I would like to summarize this session in 1 or 2 minutes. I think we are most very thankful to Mr. Sachin Paranspe for sparing his valuable time and giving us the various issues and challenges in structural engineering. Some of the important points or the takeaways today for us can be, I think sir has insisted on the basics. If your basics are very strong, I think we can deal with all the challenges. And sir has also said that it is a very creative area and there are going to be challenges. And I think a structural engineer should take up all the challenges and work on various types of projects. The case studies which were discussed were very interesting and very informative, and it told us about the various challenges. I think, sir, you have inspired all the participants by your work, and some of the important things highlighted is it is hard work what sir has done, and on behalf of cyber and the organizing committee, we thank Mr. Sachin Paranspe for the session, and we are going to meet again tomorrow in the morning. I think if our coordinator wants to say something, if Parijat sir wants to say something, yes, I think we will close the session for the day today. Thank you.
Hello, friends. I've been receiving a lot of messages from many of you and regarding attendance and the conduct of the FTP. We have sufficiently arranged the setup here so that we are using such tools to have your attendance for every session. Every session attendance is measured. Your attendance, your participation, and a small examination at the on the last day is going to qualify you for the certificate. Many of you did not give your WhatsApp number, so my registration number goes to 160, but in WhatsApp group there are 120 only, and some people are requesting me now and then here early morning, or just now somebody told me. If you are using various numbers and the registered number is not having WhatsApp, it is very difficult to immediately add you to WhatsApp group or whatever. But everything is communicated on your email. The feedback pattern of AICT is fixed, so they'll be conducting a feedback in a proper fashion. But we are in the open source education, so you might have many things to tell me. I would request that reflecting is not bad. We'll learn so many things. So if it is short one, send it on WhatsApp. If it is long one, you can use email. Whatever you want to say, simply share. I won't mind. I will understand it and we'll try to improve day by day and try to see that we satisfy you the most. In earlier FDPs, I suppose some of you are mentioning here Google form of attendance was sent or something like that. We are not sending any form to you. We are having our own attendance system, and we'll be just reporting that to AICT. That is the way it is going to work out. So don't have any such hesitation. Secondly, it's not a school-like thing, that worry too much about attendance. I request you to enlighten yourself and enjoy the interaction, and understand that this is going to be a very different type of opportunity, though it is virtual, but it is going to make a lot of sense in your life and your career. That is very, very important. One last thing I want to mention, which I did not mention in the morning, because we are a management institute and most of you are from technical background and having so many different types of expertise. So our type of institute doing some such FDP into real estate management is mere angane mein tumhara kya kaam hai, that type of thinking. Let me make it clear, all of us, we are struggling with real estate, no doubt about it, but I found that the management part is too much missing in that. That is one. And the thrust area given by AICT was real estate management. And having learned with my own experience and my contribution in the field of research, I learned that this is the area where we should bring the people together and start with some good intellectual interaction. So forgive me if I have really crossed my limit in telling you this, but really I have something to do with you. तुम्हारे अंगने में सच में हमारा बहुत कुछ काम है, because if you know this, you will translate this to society and lot of new things could happen in the new normal things. Feel free. And as I also mentioned early morning also, I apologize because Uday Gaikwad sir was with a high power committee of state government in the pollution control situation. So he could not come, but he did with online session on question and answer. And I ask you to just bear with his presentation. I'll be sharing all content which I receive with you. But please understand, technology is made for us, meant for us. We are not made for technology. So let us be very comfortable with this so that you enjoy this more as a wonderful experience. So now let us conclude the day. And tomorrow in the same spirit, in the change timings, we are going to log in at 10:30. Tomorrow we have 3 sessions. And the last session is change. Instead of Mr. Rajiv Parikh, we are going to have Vinit Dev. He is a chartered accountant basically, and he's going to talk about real estate and finance. Otherwise, the rest of the speakers are the same. And as I mentioned, the timings are going to be like this only, but first 2 sessions will be there. then a break, and then the third session. 10:30 we are supposed to meet again tomorrow. Thank you very much. Closing the session now. Thank you.